Good evening. The steering committee meeting is called to order. For the reading and approval of the minutes, I'll call on Vice Chair Turner.
Mr. Chairman, I've reviewed the minutes and I find them in order and make a motion for their approval.
Motion on the floor is a second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We will announce an alternate vacancy on the Beer Board. We will also announce the following vacancies on the Agricultural Advisory Board, which is that of a commissioner, a farmer, and farm woman. Those who hold those positions now is Commissioner Joe Frank Jernigan, Anthony Scales, and Delia Goodman. We will announce a coroner vacancy. The person that holds that office now is Mike Nunley. We will announce 2 vacancies on the Correctional Work Center Board. Those positions are currently held by Thomas Hartley and Mr. Virgil Gammon. We will announce a vacancy on the Conservation Board to fill an unexpired term of David Mitchell. This term will expire February 2017. Revisions to our Paul's Rules and Regulations. Mr. Gregory, would you like to come up to the table? I think that you would have a book in your mailbox downstairs. If not, it is on your iPad. If you want to just kind of give us a brief synopsis of what, as far as any major changes, just clean up, or?
A lot of it is just cleanup and providing better definitions for terms that weren't previously defined very well. And then cleaning up there were some articles in the current rules and regulations that need to be combined with some other articles that didn't need their own article. I'd be happy to hit the high points on the changes if you want me to go by page or just hit the major ones from there.
I think just the major ones.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, let me
Yes.
say that this was presented at the Public Safety Committee meeting, was it last Monday?
Yes, sir. It was.
Last Monday night, in detail.
Yes,
Do it in detail, and the Public Safety Committee unanimously endorsed it.
Okay. And this is in the form of a private act, is that correct?
Yes.
So once we send it to the full commission, it would require a 2/3 vote. Okay.
From my understanding from Mayor Burgess, the 2/3 vote, then it goes to the legislature.
Right.
Once they approve it, it comes back for another 2/3 vote.
Okay. If you want to hit on any major ones, that's fine.
One of the issues was that there are some folks out there that weren't treating animals humanely. And when we started to prosecute those folks or fine those folks, the judge says your rules are ambiguous, they're hard to understand, so most of them is just cleaning those up and better defining those things so that the current laws that are on the books can be enacted and enforced a little bit better. And once again, these are simply because that they're actually kind of old and probably need to be updated anyway, but there's a couple of them in there that has meaning when it comes to the legalities of their policies, and that's the ones I think we probably need to dwell on.
What started this, like Mr. Phillips has explained, when we were taking things to General Sessions Court, the judge had called us in and said, I can't enforce that rule because even though your ordinance states that you can't do this, that, or the other, it doesn't give me a penalty. So he says, yes, I can say it's against the law, but it doesn't tell me what I can sentence them or any of those type things. So we've added that in this section. That's going to be on the very last page, page 19. We added the couple of different sections there. One is so that if any part of the ordinance is found to not be able to be enforced, that the rest of the ordinance would continue on. We also added a portion there regarding the penalties, which the penalties for anything in this ordinance would be $50 per day per violation. It also establishes an animal offender school that we would host at Paul's, so it gives the judge another sentencing option. Metro is currently doing this. These folks come in for around an hour on a Saturday morning. They're educated what the laws are in Rutherford County and the state laws. Our department has always been about education. We just want to further that so that we can try to teach these folks the proper care of their animal. We won't be having to deal with them again in the future.
So is that someone in violation, or?
Yes, as
Okay.
part of the, once we take someone to General Sessions Court,
Okay.
the judge could give them a fine and or the animal offender school, so that gives them other options. Our goal is not to take anyone to court. Our goal has always been education, and this
Okay.
extends that arm. As far as the dangerous dog and potentially dangerous dog ordinance, those ordinances say that they have to meet these restrictions, but it never set a time frame for when they had to meet them. So we have folks that are just kind of kicking the can down the road. We put in that it would give 30 days for an owner to meet the potentially dangerous dog requirements, and it would give them 60 days to meet the dangerous dog requirements. They're a little bit more stringent. So it does give us a time frame there.
How often do you, when you've got a vicious dog that's getting out, how many times do you let it get out before you go take it into custody?
That's not necessarily a question I can answer because we don't, even on our dangerous dog and our potentially dangerous dogs, we don't always take those animals into custody. The way the ordinance is written, that if the officer feels that there's an imminent danger there, they can impound the animal, at which time we turn the file over to the county attorney very quickly because we're holding their property. It's been probably a handful of animals that we've removed under that since I've been there. Most of the time, it's the animals back up. We're gathering evidence, gathering witness statement forms, and then building the case to hand over to the attorney. Some of those things can take upwards of a couple of months before they're heard in court.
Or has the attorney said anything about liability on our behalf? If somebody calls about a vicious dog and we don't go pick it up within a certain period of time, is any of this addressed in these codes?
No, sir. No, sir. The dangerous dog ordinance and potentially dangerous dog ordinance is going to be an issue towards an animal that's owned versus a stray animal. Maybe, and I'm not sure if that's.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I think that's the
When it's
intent of your
owned.
question. No, one that's owned. Like I said, it's very rare that we go out and remove that animal. There's got to be some extenuating circumstances for us to remove the animal pending the court date.
Such as an attack.
Depends on how many times the animal's gotten out, the severity of the attack, what arrangements the owner has to be able to keep the animal back up. A lot of times in these situations, once we get there, the animal is already confined, and it's determining whether whether that confinement's appropriate or not to try to prevent this from happening again in the future while we build the case, or is what they have inadequate, and at that point we need to pull the animal for public safety.
I think that's what I was trying to, I don't know if Commissioner P was going that direction. I just don't want it where we get a call, we go out there, don't do anything, and all of a sudden you got a little kid
Right.
who's been attacked by a dog, and then we're getting sued for not doing,
Right. Right.
I want to make sure that I understand that we're covered if something like that happens, what our liability is.
That's not a question that I'd be able to answer for you at this point. All of our calls are very detailed notes as far as what's going on and whatnot. Obviously, we can't, if I make contact with you today and you don't follow the rules, I can't necessarily be held liable for what you do
Sure.
tomorrow, as long as you've been educated and informed of the law or whatnot. But anything that we do has the potential for liability
Right.
Towards the county.
I don't know if Commissioner Phillips was, used the dog attack as an example. If there was things that your officers look for when they go out there to say this is definitely an imminent threat, we need to.
Right, and that's what we're
You know.
looking for. Can the animal be reconfined adequately?
Right.
What arrangements do they have currently in place? Are those adequate and whatnot?
Okay.
So unfortunately, it does have to be, judgment call there on the
Yeah.
officer. Like I've said, there's been a handful or
Sure.
less of animals that we've actually removed and taken to the shelter pending the court date. Most of the time, it's gathering, like I said, the witness statement forms and then building the case to present to the county attorney.
Okay. Thank you.
Is someone, and I know you're trying to go down this line by line, but one thing that we used to do and then we stopped is if a dog was caught,
Mhm.
say roaming free, and taken to the pound for the owner to recover that animal. If they come down there and say, hey, that's my dog, that's my cat, is there a charge or a fee for them to pick up that animal?
Yes, sir, there is, and it's outlined in here. Those fees have not changed from the old ordinance to the new ordinance. There's a $25 impound fee.
Is that per day?
Well, the impound fee is just an initial fee. So if your animal was picked up this morning, you come and reclaim it this afternoon, it'd be $25. There's also a board fee of $15 per night. And then if the animal's not current on the rabies vaccination, it has to be made current before they leave. And that's $11.
So you caught a dog, kept it 3 days, it'd be 25 plus another, 45,
45,
plus
and then-
if he didn't have his rabies
Correct.
shot, it'd be that shot.
Yes, sir.
At our cost, I assume.
No, they pay $11 for that shot as well.
Okay.
So it'd be 25 plus 45 plus 11 if it had been there for 3 nights.
All right, and then on repeat offenders?
On repeat offenders, the second offense, the impound fee doubles from 25 to 50. On third offenders, it goes from 50 to 100. And most likely, they're going to be receiving a citation when they reclaim as well.
Okay.
So some dog escapes and some have a real knack for doing that.
Mhm.
Had a Jack Russell to get out 24 hours a day. And she did several times, actually. The dogs that have chips and you recover them, you usually call the owner.
Yes.
Is that what you do?
Unfortunately, what we typically find with our microchips is, I would say, 50% to 75%, the owners never registered the microchip. And it goes back to, a lot of them will go back to Petland, which has been out of business for some time, or to breeders who have been out of business or whatnot. You know, the other 50%, we're gathering information and trying to make contact with them as best we can. It just depends on if they got baited or not. There was an incident not too long ago to where a lady had lived here but had moved to California. We were able to track her down regarding that, just because she put a good alternate contact on there that knew how to get in touch with her. So we're scanning every animal that comes in that we can get our hands on. Obviously, I'm not going to ask my staff to put their hands on a feral cat or whatnot to try to scan for a microchip. It's just not worth the risk. But anything that can be scanned is.
I'm intrigued with this idea of creating an environmental court to handle cases. Can you explain that somewhat?
Well, Metro was doing that, and we've barely gotten our feet wet with that. I think that'll be something that down the road at some point would be good. What Metro was doing, I went and observed theirs one afternoon. They're taking their cases that would fall under this ordinance versus the state law, and are putting those in the environmental court. What it does for their officers, the best I could see, was it puts all those cases together, so their officers are only going to court there one day a week. To where here, you know, we're on the general sessions docket, and my officer can go up there for the 8 o'clock docket, and they can be there till 1 and 2 o'clock in the afternoon for a very simple case. So it ties them up a great deal. I see it, you know, like I said, hopefully in the future as something where we can get all of our officers in there, get it done in an hour, get them back out on the road, and save the county money and be more efficient.
Who's the judge of that?
It wasn't an actual, they called the person a judge. I can't remember the term that they gave him, but he was like under the supervision of one of the judges, something similar to that. But they did call him judge. How theirs is set up is the officers were there, and they also had a city attorney that was there who worked on behalf of the animal control officers. They heard everything that was in this ordinance, including they don't have a dangerous dog or potentially dangerous dog, they just have a vicious dog ordinance. They also heard those cases in there. So just one day a week to where you go, get it heard, and get back out on the road so you can do what you've got to do.
And who pays for the court?
For the best I understand, is the Metro government does. It's part of their court
We would
system.
just have to get one of our judges to determine that setting aside a half a day or 2 hours a week or 2 hours a month or whatever he's gonna do, and we would treat that and set those dockets separately. And they have to really have time to do that and can work into their schedule.
Do we do like a fee for the people that are going through that court to help?
I'm not
people?
sure how they do their fee portion of it. The day that I was there, they had a couple of cases. One was, I think, a minor cruelty case. One was someone who failed to quarantine their animal after it had bitten someone. They were fined. And the other cases they had were the vicious dog ordinances. Their ordinance is different. These folks, the city attorney's side, every time that one of those cases came up, his words were he'd like to have a put-down order on the animal. The judge heard the case and determined what restrictions the owner had to meet, and then gave them a certain time frame for them to do that. That's how they handle that. For us, when we go over here, you know, there's sometimes 100 or better cases on the docket, and when you get in there, you're working with the district attorney, and when you've got a no rabies vaccination or an animal running at large, and then you've got the DUIs and all the other things over here. I mean, we kind of know where that goes. So some of our cases, even though my officers build good cases and put a lot of time in it, obviously with the workload, it does get kind of put on the back burner.
Well, I notice you do have a proactive measure here on the Animal Services Department, and charge $65 for attending this school.
For attending that school.
If the judge sees fit to do that. So
Right.
That way you can recoup some of the cost and everything. So,
Correct.
yeah, so
I
that's
don't think
that's
it's gonna
very
be a huge,
proactive measure.
I don't think it's gonna be a huge money maker,
No,
but it does at least pay for the officer's time who's teaching the class, as far as doing the education part of the bill.
I'd like
And
to see
the
us-
person involved is not getting off scot-free either.
Yes. A lot of times we're going over there and we may see a $2 fine. And for my officers, I mean, that's very difficult to build a case and get a $2 fine. At least this gives another option to where we can say, hey, look, at least send them to the animal offender school so that we can try to educate and prevent this problem in the future.
I'd like to see us look into that a little bit more after we get our
Okay.
private act passed. I
Okay.
think it would be a good use of our time.
Okay.
Have you talked to any of the judges about the possibility of doing what you're talking about here?
The environmental court or the animal offender school?
Either one?
The environmental court, it was just kind of something that we kind of put off at this point. As far as the animal offender school, no, I've not spoken to any of them regarding that.
But this private act would enable you to do this without any changes.
Well, he hasn't put anything in here that says we will have an environmental court. He just made a comment there.
Right. As far as the
We
animal,
wouldn't have, what I'm saying is if we get this passed, we're not gonna have to turn around and,
Yes, you will.
well, why not ask for it on the front end after talking to the judges instead of us doing something preliminary that we'll have to redo again?
This environmental court, the only two things I can really think of offhand would be animal control or building and codes, if they're enforcing a zoning ordinance or tall weeds and grass or something, so. Let me say, we've got only 3 general session judges. We're talking about a mental health court, a veterans court, and we're having to work hard to try to get some real discussion going there. It's going to be difficult. I would not want to hold this up too long. Maybe we can make that the next iteration.
It's almost time to add another general sessions
Right.
judge.
Well, we have to pay for that. I mean, of course, they're paying for themselves, we think.
But this still would put in effect this animal offender school.
Oh, yes, that's in here,
And that-
but he doesn't have language in here on the environmental court.
Right. I noticed this was just a comment. It's
I
time,
mean, I
time
guess
to
you
look
could,
at
if you
it.
could make it language broad enough to where it doesn't say we have to do it, but give us the flexibility to do it
Well,
when we could get it worked out.
That's what I was aiming at, is try to open it up where we don't have to go back to it, and we could do it if we decided we wanted to, or if the judges were able to do it.
So we could probably craft some language that would give permission, but not require it initially. May.
Use the word may.
Use the word may.
And if they could appoint a magistrate to handle the docket, then they wouldn't have to necessarily even be there to.
Well, true.
Decide
And
those
of course, we'd have
cases.
to fund the magistrate separately as. And one of our general sessions, previous general session judges did allow his assistant to. And they, from time to time, they do appoint other attorneys or someone in their office if they're a real attorney to hear those cases. So we might could do something like that. But, so he can consider and get our county attorney to consent that we can use the word may to some describe the potential for the environmental court.
I mean, it looks like it'll save us some time and help him along those lines too, so.
I think the avenue that, like the mayor said, they're working concert with the judges, that if they could set aside a certain time, for this. It's not that demanding. You don't have that many cases, do you? Do you have any idea how many a month, basically, you might have? Just
it
general-
varies. I
general
have
figure.
some officers that would have 10 cases a month. I have some that would have 3. But you take that over, right now 7 trained officers. I don't think it would be something that we would be looking at weekly by any means. I think once a month or bi-weekly. But if we could just get everybody in the room, get them settled, and get my folks back out. It's difficult when you have 4 to 5 officers on the road on any given day, and you've got one of them tied up in court for 5 or 6 hours.
I think that would be the avenue to approach, kind of work in concert with them.
Yes, sir.
Well, I reviewed the whole thing earlier today, and I move that we recommend approval with the language that allows us to have the option of creating an environmental court with or without a magistrate.
Let's just leave that open. Just give us the option to create an environmental court.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. Is there a
To
second?
hear specific cases regarding animal control and other things that may, just that, just making me focus on that.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Any more questions from Mr. Gregory?
Some of the, when you first started out, you were talking about some of the penalties. Are there the penalties to the humans, not to the dogs, as far as confinement? You know, and I think I've got most of the confinement stuff down. But as far as an owner out of compliance, is there, I didn't see anywhere in there where, say, an owner could be arrested for non-compliance. I didn't catch that, or I want to know what the penalties are before I vote on this. So somebody that's out of compliance.
Right, the penalties are gonna be over on page 19.
I was going through some of those, and that's what
Counties
maybe I
don't
want.
have police powers, so we can't pass laws that require people to be arrested.
Well, so that's what I was getting at,
So the
is I couldn't
penalties they put-
understand, you know, how we were able to do this, because, I mean, the state's the one that's
Civil
gonna say,
penalties are all that we can do, up to $50.
$50
well,
per day per
that's
violation.
what I wanted to make sure we weren't heading down, because I know that, you know, the state's the one's gonna make the law.
Right.
As long as we're in compliance to that, but we can be more severe on some of our ordinances than what the state law is.
Now, that $50 is the most we can do on these type of,
It is on that. No,
Yes.
well, what I'm talking about is, we may say a dog has to be confined in a cinder block cell or whatever instead of a chain link fence. You know,
yeah,
something like-
we do craft that language, yes, he has done that.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, but I was afraid that we might have gone in and said something to the order, we're gonna fine or, you know, have this guy arrested for non-compliance, so we're not out of line with what the state law is.
The only thing we can do within this ordinance would be the penalties, which are the $50 per day per violation. And when it comes to the state ordinance, which typically we're working with the proof of rabies vaccinations as well as cruelty to animals, those, yes, we can have folks arrested for that. But we don't personally do that. We would call an officer out, or typically what happens is somebody's being issued a citation. They either don't come to sign for the citation, or they don't sign for it while the officer's there. And then there's either a warrant issued for their arrest, or the officer comes out, picks them up, takes them in. That's only under a state law.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, Becky, would you want to read the motion, please?
Recommend approval with language to have the option to establish an environmental court to hear specific cases for animal control.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Gregory.
Thank you.
Discuss meeting with legislators. This is historically done in the first part of January, and I think our meeting date is scheduled for January the 5th, which we would probably have a brief meeting and then invite the legislators to discuss any issues that the committee may have on their mind. So is the 5th okay with everyone on?
What day? Is it a Monday or?
It'll be-
Monday.
Yeah,
It'll be our regular meeting.
regular meeting, but
Yes.
I remember the last time the legislators were called in session, and when they showed up, their time was limited, and I think one didn't even show up. And I guess what I'm saying, we're asking questions, and they're answering our questions in haste because they gotta get, the word they use, they gotta get back to Nashville.
Well, when does the session start?
I don't know, that's what we need to find out.
Need to
exactly when
find
the
that
session
out
starts.
first,
So
because
the
last time it was a mess on my end.
I think I remember that.
You- yeah.
Yeah.
So if the session starts after the 5th, likely most of them can come. It just depends if they've got something they've got to be in Nashville on the 5th. So I think you could, at this moment, suggest and pass that you would set that as a date, subject to your chairperson confirming that that's an acceptable date with them. And if it's not, give them a little bit of latitude to pick another date.
Okay.
I'm along with that.
Okay, do we want to put that in the motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Last month, Commissioner Turner had requested additional information on the makeup of the insurance committee. Mr. Mayor, do you want to?
If there should be an attachment under other business that lists the membership of the Insurance and Benefits Committee. Is it on there, Mr.
It
Turner?
is, yes, sir, and I appreciate you getting that to us,
That
thank
just
you.
tells you who I can tell you precisely, if you want to open that little document, and we'll just go down there and I'll tell you who's on the committee, if that would help a little bit more. Of course, the county mayor, county commissioners, and you have 3 county commissioners, Mr. Jordan, Mr. McAdoo, and Mr. Nipper. You have 3 at-large members, and they are appointed by the mayor. And
3 or 4? I'm showing 4.
4. Sorry, I'm out here. I was still on 3 county commissioners. And the 4 members on there, Mr. Greg Hall has been on there a substantial length of time, and he's knows a lot about our insurance program. He's been on there longer than I have been here. Donnie Hester, he's works within the insurance program of National Health Care Corporation. Susan Boney is one of your previous risk management directors, insurance directors. And Ricky Marlin is works with one of our local manufacturing firms, and he's in management of some sort. But these are all people that have outside private business experiences, except for Ms. Boney, in insurance. So they bring some value in that they are experiencing some of the same things we are out there in the insurance arena. The Rutherford Education Association has had 1 member, and that's been Miss Regina Harvey, and I guess she's a teacher. She's a teacher, or she has some role within the school system, but she's a representative of the Rutherford Education Association. And there are 6 county employees, 2 of which are selected by the school board, by the director. Mr. Odom, and the same 2 have been on there, even with Mr. Gill previously. Jeff Sandvik, who is their finance director, and Paula Barnes, who is the person that's in charge of personnel matters at the central office. Those 2 people are appointed by the school board through Mr. Odom. The sheriff appoints 1 person, and he's appointed Mr. Joe Russell, his administrative chief. And the highway superintendent appoints 1 person, and that's Miss Mary Hickerson, and she's been on there for an extended period of time. Knows as much about the program as probably any of us on the committee, would you say, Ms. Stevenson? She's very capable. And then the insurance committee itself selects from applicants 2 other people, and the 2 people that are serving now is Elizabeth Grace. She is on she's at the EMS department, has been there, and she's takes care of all our billing and things out there, that knows about Medicare and all of that with the EMS billings. And Mr. Virgil Gammon is the other person that's been selected by the committee. And we have 2 other people that are not voting members, but they are there contributing every month. Ms. Nolan, our finance director, and Ms. Stevenson, our HR director.
Thank you.
And I don't mean to open up a can of worms, but what's the purpose of the insurance committee? What do they do?
We review every change that's made in health insurance for both the current employees and retirees. We recommend and set all the rates that are associated with all of those and all the plan options that are available. And Sonia, you can help me here. All of the liability insurance, all the property insurance, all of those things, we take bids, we review those bids, we evaluate those, we make recommendations. What else do we cover?
And it's anything from the EAP to the supplemental to life insurance. We evaluate the terms and conditions of, like a couple of years ago, we raised the life insurance rate from $25,000 to $35,000. That's one of the things that has to go before it. The ZNC program, our wellness, we also cover OSHA requirements, recordables and reportables, to make sure that we understand that, safety, to making sure that all the things that we're doing are in line in order to be in compliance with our OSHA requirements as safety is concerned.
Do you oversee the Take Care operation?
To take
Yeah,
care,
that's
our
part of it.
on-site clinics is another thing, the flu clinics, the health fairs, I mean, any number of those things are discussed and voted upon the voting members as to when we would have them, what we would offer, what it would look like moving forward. So the things that we're doing now with wellness, the Know Your Numbers campaign, every year we add to that. That goes through the committee on what items we're going to add each year in order to enhance our employees' lifestyles and their wellness, because it's twofold for the employees. It's quality of life for the employee, but it's also less claims for the county to help keep the financials in line so that you don't have to raise premiums and those type of things. So there's any number of those things that will come through. And when there's a bid open, the contenders, the ones who, they do presentations, and then the board will select out of the presenters, you know, it could be 2 or 3 presenters that come forth and present their product and say, this is the value that we bring and this is the cost that's associated and those type of things. So.
Are changes subject to the commission approval?
Everything is subject to commission approval. Whatever this committee comes up with and recommends, it goes to the budget committee. And then the budget committee reviews it in as much detail as they so choose, and then it comes on to the commission for approval. So nothing can be done by this committee unilaterally.
How
And
long-
excuse me.
I'm sorry, how long has the committee been in existence? Who was making those decisions before? Were
Well,
they-
it was here before I was here. We'll have to ask somebody like
It's
Mr.
been here
It was here way before I was here.
Okay.
It
So it's
was
got a
here
pretty
when I
good
got
legacy.
here.
Oh,
I
okay.
was in seminary.
Good answer.
It may not have been 15, it may have been 3 to 5.
Yeah.
But it was here.
I just was curious who was making those decisions before the committee or having that dialogue.
Well, Trey and I both served on it in '98, I know,
Yeah.
from '98 to 2010.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the main things is, when they open the bids, whoever administers this program comes out and they bid. So that's, I guess, one of the major things that they do,
Yeah.
getting the most bang for the buck.
Right.
Whoever administers all these programs, the process that they have to go through. So, I don't know, I can't remember right off the top of my head, Beeler, are they still? Yeah.
No, it's Cowan.
Okay.
Well, Cigna is our administrator of the plan.
Right.
Now,
Callan
But
is our
Beeler-
benefit advisor.
Advisor, but that's what, you know, William Sevilla was our advisor,
Oh,
and the
okay.
other gentleman, I can't think of his name, it escapes me right now.
from Franklin.
There was
He and-
one person.
He and
that-
his son.
Yeah, I
It's he and
can't
his
think
son.
of
I
his
can't
name,
think for the
but-
life of me, but
but
they
he-
did a lot of the things
yeah.
that Cowan does, but Cowan's
He
a
advised
larger
for several
organization.
years.
Right.
And certainly these programs, we've had to use an actuarial firm to project all these costs forward under GASB requirements, so it's really complicated.
Yeah.
It is complicated. One of the reasons I asked was making recommendations. They vote to make recommendations. In essence, they're approving and then asking for county commission approval of what they're recommending, correct?
Correct. And typically, these recommendations are months ahead of the actual implementation. Say a rate change, which might not occur in January, we might bring it through the commission middle of the year or thereabouts.
Leave enough time that it's sent back, because there has been a couple of times where we've done something or something's been recommended and questions came up in the presentation that either
Well,
way.
we had a substantial elongated discussion about retiree benefits, and we made some substantial changes to, that needed to be, like prescription, Part D prescription drugs can be obtained through Medicare, and that was an automatic through our process. Now but we have a grandfathered process, but we are unwinding that extreme liability there.
Those are the issues I think that are on a lot of our minds as we're voting for budget considerations, because the last few years it has been a larger fee associated with those benefits. And my question is, if this committee, which are made up of a lot of employees themselves, are making these recommendations, which could be considered in essence by some a conflict of interest, okay? And I'm just throwing this out there. I'm not saying this is coming from me, but if they come back with a recommendation that this is what the fee should be, and I'm just going to throw out a simple example, $100 a month for this benefit, and our employees' portion is $10, but we as a commission say, no, it shouldn't be. It should be $50. We have the right to do that.
Absolutely.
And that's where the commission needs to get more and more involved in this process and understand it a little bit more and more and more. And the more people that are involved in this, the better educated we're going to be. So I think that this insurance committee serves a very valuable purpose. But I come from the real world. I know what benefits have happened. Just like 20 years ago, Sonia worked for the same company that I did, and we had kind of a Cadillac plan, didn't have to pay anything. And then 10 years later, those particular benefits no longer existed because, quote, the company, which in this case would be the county, couldn't afford to pay those benefits. It would have amounted to almost a double of salary for some folks. So those types of things in the real world, out where people make and sell products, we're making decisions that a lot of employees had difficulty in swallowing some of those things. But the educational process took a long period of time. And I think that's what Mayor Burgess was saying a minute ago, that education process is what we've been going through, especially the last few years with our employees. And I think it's working, but I also think that we need to continue to really keep a magnifying glass on that and making sure that they have selections, that they don't have to just take this, and I keep saying Cadillac. Cadillac is probably not the right word anymore, maybe a BMW or something like that. But
It's 86.
there you go. Thank you. that there are other options for those things too, and that educational process that you go through is kind of cool. Just like spousal benefits and what the private sector did. If you're employed and you covered your spouse, but your spouse worked for someone else and they had insurance available to them, they had to take it,
Yeah.
or they had to pay some type of a
Substantially higher.
yeah, higher rates. And those are the type of things I think that we've looked at in order to keep taxpayer costs down. And I commend you guys for doing that. But still, the rates have continued to go up, and I'm not real sure that there's any end in sight. Maybe there is, maybe there's not. I don't know.
It's definitely a delicate balance between what's good for the, I mean, I can honestly say from the majority of us on the committee, if not all of us, realize that there's definitely a balance between what's good for the employee and what's good for the taxpayer. And it's, you try to find that fine line. And healthcare reform is going to change the look of that in the next couple of years. So.
You mentioned education, and this is, the employees have to continue to be education. So we've had some thoughtful and creative changes in the plan structure. I'll just read this to you right here. They just finished, open enrollment just closed today at noon, but of the 4,910 employees who completed open enrollment, we have a 15.5% increase in the HRA plan participation. So the employees, their premiums are lower, but they're a bit more at risk themselves, but they're doing some specific evaluations of their medical conditions and selecting and choosing some things that maybe they're paying less premiums. And so this whole thing is a complicated, again, and we've had a 11.75% reduction in deductible plan participation, which is the one that's the most expensive for all of us. So I'm just saying that things continue to evolve ever so such a small amount, but over a period of time, it's making a real difference.
It's a fine line, and you guys have walked that line for several years, and I take my hat off to you that, you know, we've got a group of employees. They're our employees. They work for us, and we want to take care of them. On the other hand, you've got increased cost for the county that keeps going up and up and up and up. So I know what you've been going through, and I know you've looked at alternatives, and you looked at wellness situations versus proactive versus reactive kind of things. And I know that what you've been going through, and just have to keep our nose to that grindstone and continue that. Some of those enrollments that you talked about, if they completed some type of wellness risk assignment or something like that, they got a deduction, and I mean, it's out there just for people to save money, and I'll be willing to bet you that there's probably a percentage that didn't do it.
But we're getting a lot better response. Last year on the biometric screening, it was high 90% of people of all the employees actually did it. So that whole process identifies potential medical issues early on, and if the earlier we can catch these things and prevent them, that's what this is all about.
Health fairs and all
Want to
those
eliminate
types of
the
things.
catastrophic event is what you're wanting, so the health risk assessment is to, we'll catch those things, not 100% of the time, but some of the time. It'd be a whole lot better to treat somebody's cholesterol than an open heart surgery. So that's what it's designed for.
And also, on a lot of the programs, we got a built-in penalty. They don't participate in these programs, and I think that has pushed the percentage up high. And it's one thing that they left out, and it's concerned me a lot more the last several years, is GASP 45. That we have to have millions of dollars in our coffers just to cover our self-insurance program. So, like I say, it gets pretty difficult.
We shrunk that millions, but it's still a lot of millions that we still do have the liability for, okay? We didn't get it to zero, we won't ever get it to zero.
No,
So
we gotta
we
work
keep
on it.
working on these programs coupled with that.
One question that, seems to kind of the root of this is, is the committee itself, since they're made up of commissioners and county employees in some cases, quite a few of them, if they're too biased to actually do this job. I'm, of course, been serving on budget, and every year we've looked at it, and the recommendations that have come from the insurance committee are, in my view, are very in favor of the taxpayer versus the employee. I'm not seeing a lot of, hey, let's do this for ourselves, even though these guys could vote it in and send it to us as a commission. Budget passed it on to the full commission, it could be passed. But I don't see that kind of initiative coming out of this committee, and I trust them. As a matter of fact, I kind of cringe when they come up here because, it's tough. It's flat tough. And the budget committee, as a rule, something we've done, and, of course, the full commission's got the final say on this, but we've been slowly, so, we're not just slamming people, moving in the direction for an 80-20 pay out on these, and I know some people have been frustrated with that, but we've been just trying to look at what the employee situation is versus what the taxpayers are, and the circumstances that our country and our state's been in, and it's really been hard. That's made it more difficult on budget in the last 5 years than any time I've been up here serving. I've either served on budget or sat in on the budget committee meetings since I've been up here, and it's just really difficult. And people don't understand or appreciate what this insurance committee is actually doing for us, much less how much it affects our budget. It's right to me, it's right behind schools as far as, you know, the cost is coming out of our pockets. Anyway, I want to say thank you to you guys that serve on there, and I think anybody that's gutsy enough to put in the application to serve on this committee deserves all the kudos they can get.
Well, when I first arrived here, I'm not sure we had any commissioners on the.
No, they didn't want to
insurance
serve.
committee.
You couldn't get anybody to
We-
serve.
I had to recruit.
That's right.
Twist a few arms just to get commissioners on there.
I think mine was twisted just.
Any more questions or comments? Any other business? Well, this meeting stands adjourned.